of Liberia. Early inhabitants. Long before the modern nation of Liberia was founded, the region was home to various indigenous ethnic groups, including the Kpelle, Bassa, Grebo, Vai, Lorma, and others. These groups established their own societies, trade networks, and cultural traditions. The Vai people were among the first in West Africa to create a written script in the 19th century. European contact and slave trade, 15th to 19th century. Portuguese explorers reached the Liberian coast in the mid-1400s, calling it the Grain Coast because of the abundance of melegueta pepper. Over time, the coast was visited by Portuguese, Dutch, and British traders. While Liberia was not a major hub for the transatlantic slave trade compared to other parts of West Africa, it was still affected by the regional commerce in enslaved people. The American Colonization Society and founding of Liberia, 1820s to 1847. In the early 19th century, the American Colonization Society, ACS, was formed in the United States. Its goal was to resettle free African Americans in Africa, partly to reduce tensions in the U.S., and partly from paternalistic or racist beliefs that black people could not thrive in American society. In 1822, the first group of freed African Americans arrived on the Liberian coast. They settled at Cape Messerado, establishing Monrovia, named after U.S. President James Monroe. These settlers, known as Americo-Liberians, established new communities and governments, often separate from and in tension with the indigenous populations. Independence, 1847. On July 26, 1847, Liberia declared its independence, becoming Africa's first modern republic. Joseph Jenkins Roberts became its first president. Unlike most African nations that later fell under European colonial rule, Liberia remained independent, though under significant economic and political influence from the United States. Americo-Liberian dominance, 1847 to 1980. For over a century, Liberia was governed by Americo-Liberians through the true Whig Party, which held uninterrupted political power. The Americo-Liberians built their institutions based on U.S. models: government, education, and legal systems. Indigenous Liberians were largely excluded from political participation, land ownership, and governance. Despite economic growth in rubber production, notably through Firestone's vast plantations established in 1926, inequality deepened. 20th century struggles and coup, 1900 to 1980. By the 20th century, Liberia faced growing internal and external challenges. It relied heavily on foreign companies and aid. Indigenous groups increasingly resented exclusion from political life. On April 12, 1980, Master Sergeant Samuel Doe, an indigenous Liberian from the Kran group, staged a coup d'etat, overthrowing and killing President William R. Tolbert, Jr. This ended Americo-Liberian dominance after more than 130 years. Civil Wars, 1989 to 2003. Liberia entered one of the darkest periods in its history. First Civil War, 1989 to 1997. Charles Taylor's rebellion against Samuel Doe led to years of brutal conflict. Doe was captured and killed in 1990, and rival factions fought for control, leading to mass atrocities. An estimated 250,000 people were killed, and many more were displaced. Second Civil War, 1999 to 2003. Renewed fighting between Taylor's government and rebel groups caused further devastation. Taylor was eventually forced into exile in 2003. Peace and democratic progress, 2003 to present. In 2005, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected president, becoming Africa's first elected female head of state. Her leadership focused on rebuilding the country, securing international aid, and improving governance. In 2018, former soccer star George Weah became president, marking Liberia's first peaceful democratic transfer of power in decades. Today, Liberia continues to face challenges such as poverty, corruption, unemployment, and rebuilding infrastructure, but it remains a symbol of resilience and independence in Africa. Quick facts. Founded 1822 as colony, 1847 independence capital, Monrovia. Motto: the love of liberty brought us here. Unique fact: along with Ethiopia, Liberia is one of the only African countries that avoided European colonization. Timeline of Liberian history: pre-colonial era, before 1820s, ancient times, 1400s. The region that is today Liberia was inhabited by various ethnic groups, including the Kpelle, Bassa, Kru, Grebo, Vai, Lorma, Kissi, Gola, and others. They developed rich cultural traditions, trade systems, and governance structures. 1461. Portuguese explorers, including Pedro de Sintra, reached the coast and called it the Grain Coast for its abundance of melegueta pepper. 15th to 17th centuries, the area was involved in coastal trade with Europeans, Portuguese, Dutch, British, French, including some participation in the Atlantic slave trade. Colonization and founding, 1820 to 1847, 1816. The American Colonization Society, ACS, was founded in the United States, aiming to resettle freed African Americans in Africa. 1820. First group of settlers, freed Black Americans, arrived on Sherbro Island in present-day Sierra Leone. Many died of malaria. Survivors later moved to Cape Mesurado, Liberian coast. 1822. Colony established at Cape Mesurado, with the settlement named Monrovia, after U.S. President James Monroe. 1820s to 1830s. More groups of freed African Americans and some Afro-Caribbeans arrived. These settlers became known as Americo-Liberians. 1839. The ACS established the Commonwealth of Liberia, consolidating settlements under one government. 1847. On July 26th, Liberia declared independence, becoming Africa's first republic. The Constitution of Liberia was modeled after the U.S. Constitution. Joseph Jenkins Roberts became the first president. Americo-Liberian rule, 1847 to 1980, 1847 to 1900. Liberia struggled economically, but maintained independence while much of Africa was colonized by Europeans. Americo-Liberians dominated politics, marginalizing indigenous peoples. 1862. The United States officially recognized Liberia's independence, delayed due to tensions over slavery in the U.S. 18th century, European colonial expansion reduced Liberia's territory. Britain and France claimed bordering lands. 1926. The Liberian government signed a major concession with Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, granting 1 million acres for rubber plantations. This became the backbone of Liberia's economy. 1930s. A League of Nations investigation exposed forced labor practices in Liberia, damaging its international reputation. President Charles D.B. King resigned in 1930. 1944. William V. S. Tubman became president, served until 1971. His open-door policy encouraged foreign investment, modernized Liberia, but kept political control in Americo-Liberian hands. 1963. Liberia was a founding member of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, now African Union. 1971. Tubman died, succeeded by William R. Tolbert, Jr., who attempted limited reforms to include indigenous Liberians in government. 1979. The rice riots erupted in Monrovia after Tolbert's government attempted to raise rice prices. The protests turned violent and shook the regime. Coup and civil conflicts, 1980 to 2003. April 12, 1980. Master Sergeant Samuel Doe, a Kron ethnic group member, led a coup, assassinating President Tolbert. Doe became the first indigenous Liberian president, ending 133 years of Americo-Liberian rule. 1980s. Doe's regime was marked by corruption, ethnic favoritism, and brutality. He maintained U.S. backing during the Cold War. 1985. Doe declared himself winner of an election. Charles Taylor, once a Doe official, fled and later organized a rebellion. 1989. On December 24th, Charles Taylor launched an armed rebellion with the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, NPFL, beginning the First Liberian Civil War. 1990. Doe was captured and executed by a rival warlord, Prince Johnson. Civil war deepened as multiple factions fought. An estimated 200,000 civilians were killed. 1997. After peace negotiations, Charles Taylor was elected president in elections widely seen as influenced by fear of renewed war. 1999. A second rebellion began, leading to the Second Liberian Civil War. 2003. Fighting escalated. Under pressure from the international community and rebels, Charles Taylor resigned and went into exile in Nigeria. A UN peacekeeping force, UNMIL, was deployed. Peace and Reconstruction, 2003 to present. 2005. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected president, becoming Africa's first elected female head of state. She emphasized reconciliation, women's rights, and economic recovery. 2011, Sirleaf won re-election and shared the Nobel Peace Prize for her work promoting peace and women's rights. 2014 to 2016. Liberia was hit hard by the Ebola outbreak, which killed thousands and strained its fragile healthcare system. 2017. Former international football star George Weah was elected president, marking Liberia's first peaceful democratic transfer of power in over 70 years.